On May 26, 1828, a teenager was found wandering in a public square in what is now Nuremberg, Germany. The boy, around 16 or 17 years old, appeared confused and seemed unable to read or write anything except for the name Kaspar Hauser. When asked about his life, at first he could only say that he did not know who he was, other than his name, or where he came from. Within a few weeks, he amazed everyone by seemingly learning how to read and write. The following year, with his newfound fame, his autobiography was published, in which he claimed that he had spent his entire life in a small, dark room, sleeping on straw, and was raised by invisible strangers. Now, returning to your own self, from the moment you became aware, you were told what everything was. You never questioned it, for how could you? You have a name, you belong to a family or a particular community, and around you there exists the reality as it appears. But what if all of that were not true? Look around you. What if I told you that what you see is not reality? It is merely light reflecting off objects, processed by your brain into shapes and colors? Even your sense of touch is nothing more than electrical signals sent to your brain, convincing you that you are in contact with something solid. Pause for a moment and reflect. The world you experience is not what is happening right now. Your brain requires time to process reality. In other words, you are always living in the past, just milliseconds behind the present. The information is processed by your mind, which then predicts the present based on the past. Can you perceive the contradiction here? Does it not stir something within you? A realization that perhaps the world you take for granted as real is not as it seems, but a creation of your mind continuously shaped by past experiences. In such a contemplation, we are faced with the fragility of our understanding, and perhaps a deeper question arises: what is truly real? Or more profoundly, what does it mean to know anything at all when the very nature of our perceptions is so uncertain? Everything you see, feel, and think is already outdated by the time you become aware of it. This realization is where things begin to unravel, where the very foundation of reality starts to shake. If your entire reality is simply a collection of interpretations, if you never truly experience the world in real time, how can you be certain about what's real? How can you trust what your senses tell you if they're always lagging behind the present moment? Take dreams, for example. When you're inside a dream, it feels real. Your mind constructs a world, people, emotions, even time itself. You completely believe in it, and yet it's all an illusion. You may feel joy, fear, or excitement, but none of those experiences exist in the waking world. It's only when you wake up that you realize everything you thought was real was just a mirage created by your mind. So what makes this waking moment any different? What if your waking life is simply another dream? A long, consistent hallucination built by your mind to help you navigate the world, to keep you functioning in the chaos of existence. Neuroscience has already confirmed that your brain is actively constructing your reality before you even perceive it. Studies show that your brain decides what you will do before you consciously make a decision. The thought that you think you're having, your brain has already made it happen before you even became aware of it. This means that the you who believes they are in control, the one making decisions, taking action, and having thoughts, is just a shadow of something much deeper. It's an echo of decisions that were already made long before you realized them. Think about Kaspar Hauser, the young boy who appeared out of nowhere in Nuremberg, Germany in 1828. He built a reality for himself out of nothing, because his mind demanded meaning. He didn't have a past, no clear understanding of his identity, but his mind created one for him. In the same way, your mind constantly constructs your reality. But here's the big question. If reality is just an illusion your mind builds for you, then who are you really? And if none of this is real, what happens when you stop believing in it? What happens when you let go of the illusion of the self? Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century philosopher, wrote something that disturbed many people. There are no facts, only interpretations. He wasn't just talking about differing opinions or perspectives. He was questioning the very nature of reality itself. When you think about it, he was absolutely right. You don't experience reality as it truly is. you experience your brain's version of it. Right now, as you sit there reading this, you believe you're making a choice, that you're in control of your thoughts. But let's put that to the test. Take a moment and try to stop thinking completely. No thoughts, no words, no images. Just empty your mind entirely. See? You can't do it. Thoughts arise on their own without your permission. That random memory that just popped up, you didn't ask for it. That fleeting thought about what you're going to have for dinner, it just appeared out of nowhere. You didn't summon it. It simply happens. So, if you're not the one choosing your thoughts, then who is? This is where the illusion of the self begins to crumble. Every single belief you hold, every thought that arises in your mind, is not truly yours. They are the result of conditioning, of experiences, of things you've been told since childhood. Your mind is like a sponge, absorbing everything around it and forming what you call you. But what happens when you strip that all away? What if you could wipe the slate clean? Imagine for a moment that you were born in a completely different time, in a completely different place, with completely different parents. Would you still be the same you that you are now? Of course not. Your identity, your sense of self, isn't something fixed or inherent. It's just a construct, a series of mental patterns built on experiences, memories, and external influences. And constructs can be questioned, challenged, and, most importantly, deconstructed. Now here's where things get even stranger. Modern neuroscience has found that the self you think you are doesn't actually exist in your brain. There's no specific self-center in the brain, no place where you are located, no physical entity that is your sense of self. The self is a byproduct of the brain's processes, an illusion created by the way your brain integrates information. What we call the self is an ongoing process, a construct that emerges from the complex web of neural activity, memories, experiences, and perceptions. It's not a permanent, unchanging entity, but a constantly shifting process. The you think you are right now is already being overwritten by new experiences, new thoughts, and new perceptions as you read these words. This idea isn't just a philosophical abstraction, it has profound implications. If the self is an illusion, then everything you hold on to as you, your name, your past, your memories, your preferences, your identity, is not as solid as it seems. They are simply mental constructs, shifting and changing with every passing moment. But there's a liberating aspect to all of this. If your sense of self isn't fixed, then you're free. Free to change, free to redefine yourself, free to explore new possibilities. If you can let go of the illusion of a permanent self, you can begin to experience life without the constraints of your old beliefs and patterns. This is why the illusion of control is so powerful yet deceptive. You may believe you're making decisions, but what if your decisions are already being made for you? What if your sense of agency, your sense of being in control, is just another layer of the illusion your mind constructs to keep you functional in the world? When you truly come to terms with the idea that reality is just a series of interpretations, a constant hallucination your mind constructs to make sense of the chaos, you begin to realize that there is no fixed reality, no unchanging self. What you see, feel, and experience is just a projection of your mind, a beautiful, complex illusion. And when you stop believing in it, when you stop identifying with the illusion of self, you might just discover a deeper truth, one that transcends the boundaries of your mind and the limitations of your perception. There is no central control center, no core you running the show. Instead, your brain is made up of millions of competing processes, all working together to create the illusion of a unified self. Think of it like this. Imagine a crowd of people, all shouting their own opinions. One voice speaks the loudest, and you assume that voice is you. But in the next moment, another voice takes over, and suddenly you're someone different, more confident, more anxious, more relaxed. This is why you can't control your own thoughts. The you that thinks it's in control is just another thought, another voice in the crowd. Now, take this realization and apply it to everything you experience. Your emotions, they arise without your permission. Your desires, they appear out of nowhere. Your fears, they weren't chosen by you. So if you're not the one in control, then what are you? This is the question that ancient spiritual traditions have been asking for thousands of years. The Buddhists call it anatta, the doctrine of no self. The Hindus call it Maya, the illusion of the material world. Even modern science is beginning to confirm what mystics have known all along. The self is a story. A useful story, but a story nonetheless. And just like any story, it can be rewritten. The moment you stop identifying with the thoughts that appear in your mind, the moment you see them as passing clouds rather than absolute truths, something changes. You begin to realize that you were never the thinker. You were the awareness behind the thoughts all along. But what happens when you fully step into that awareness? What happens when you stop believing in the illusion entirely? The fabric of reality is thinner than you think. For centuries, people believed that reality was a solid, fixed thing, something you could touch, measure, and define. But what if everything you experience is nothing more than a fragile projection, a creation of your mind? Science has already proven that your brain doesn't directly experience the world. It only interprets electrical signals. What you see isn't just light hitting your eyes, it's your brain decoding those signals into an image. What you hear isn't actual sound, it's vibrations turned into electrical impulses. Your thoughts, emotions, and even your identity are just patterns of neural activity firing in response to these interpretations. Now here's where things get unsettling. If your entire reality is just an interpretation, then what's actually real? Think about a dream inside a dream. Everything feels real. The people, the places, even the emotions. But when you wake up, you realize it was just a construction of your mind. What if waking life is just another layer of that? A dream that feels real simply because you haven't woken up from it yet. This is where the nature of perception gets eerie. Consider the famous hallucination experiments conducted by neuroscientists. By stimulating specific areas of the brain, they were able to make people see, hear, and feel things that weren't there. Yet, to those people, those experiences felt just as real as waking life. If your brain can fabricate an entire reality from nothing, how do you know it's not already doing that all the time? Think about the way your mind fills in gaps when you look around. Do you really see everything? Or does your mind create what it expects to be there? Take a moment to really look at the room around you. Your eyes can only process a small fraction of the total visual information in your environment at any given moment. The rest is filled in by your brain based on previous experiences, expectations, and assumptions. In other words, the reality you perceive is incomplete. It's a best guess, an interpretation, not the full picture. This brings us to a profound question. What is the difference between seeing something and imagining it? If what you see is a projection of your brain, filtered through your senses and interpreted into an image, how can you be sure it's truly real? Is there any difference between the reality of a dream and the reality of your waking life, other than the fact that you haven't woken up from the latter yet? The more we dive into this, the more we realize that perception is incredibly malleable. Your brain can be tricked, your senses can be fooled, and the very foundation of your reality can be distorted. A thought, an emotion, a memory, they all arise from the same neural activity. They all seem equally real, but none of them are more real than the others. The experiences you have, whether in a dream or while awake, are simply different expressions of the same process. Your brain trying to make sense of the world, trying to create a cohesive story out of fragmented information. So what happens when you start questioning this story? What happens when you stop assuming that your thoughts, your emotions, and your sense of self are the absolute truths of your existence? This is where the real transformation happens. When you stop identifying with the thoughts that arise in your mind, when you stop clinging to the illusion of the self, you step into a new level of awareness. An awareness that is not bound by the limitations of perception. A freedom that allows you to see beyond the illusion. But this new awareness comes with its own challenges. It's unsettling to realize that everything you've known, everything you've built your sense of self upon, is just a story, an illusion. But it is also liberating. The moment you stop believing in the narrative your mind has created, the moment you let go of the illusion of control, you step into a deeper truth. You are not the thinker. You are the awareness behind the thinking. You are the space in which thoughts arise, not the thoughts themselves. And here's the truly extraordinary thing. Once you realize this, once you let go of the illusion of self, you begin to see the world in a completely different way. You stop seeing yourself as separate from the world around you, and you start to experience life as an interconnected flow of experiences, sensations, and awareness. You become free from the limitations of the self, free from the constant pull of desires, fears, and anxieties that have been driving your thoughts and actions. The fabric of reality is indeed thinner than you think. What you experience as solid, fixed, and real is nothing more than a web of interpretations, constantly shifting and changing. And once you see this, once you step outside the illusion, you begin to experience a deeper, more profound reality, one that exists beyond the limitations of thought, perception, and self. In the end, the question isn't, what is real, but who are you? And the answer, as unsettling as it may be, is that you are not who you think you are. You are not the thoughts, the emotions, or the identity that you've built up over a lifetime. You are the awareness behind all of that, the space in which everything arises and falls away. And once you realize this, you begin to see the world not as a collection of separate, fixed things, but as a fluid, interconnected experience, a dream perhaps, but one in which you are fully awake. There's a reason eyewitness testimonies are often unreliable. Your brain doesn't record reality like a camera. It doesn't simply capture what's happening around you in a neutral, objective way. Instead, your brain actively constructs reality based on past experiences. And what's even more bizarre is that it filters those experiences through your personal conditioning. This process becomes even stranger when you realize that your conditioning shapes what you see, hear, and even believe. The same event can happen to two people, but they will remember it completely differently because of the way their minds have been conditioned. One might focus on certain details, while the other might notice entirely different aspects of the situation. This means that your mind isn't showing you an objective world. It's showing you a version of reality that's heavily filtered, shaped, and constructed by your past experiences. And what's worse, most of the time you don't even realize it. Your perception of the world is a product of your personal biases, beliefs, and past encounters, not the raw, unfiltered truth. So here's the crucial question. If your mind is constantly shaping, filtering, and constructing reality without you even noticing, how can you be sure that anything is real? How can you trust that what you perceive is an accurate reflection of the world around you? The unsettling truth is that if everything you know is just a story your mind is telling itself, then what happens when you stop believing that story? When you stop buying into the narrative that your mind spins for you every day, what happens to your sense of reality? This is the kind of deep questioning that challenges the very foundation of how we perceive the world. Because the fact is, you never actually see reality. You only see what your mind lets you see. And often, that's not the full picture. There's a strange experiment that proves just how much of your reality is filtered before it even reaches you. In the 1990s, psychologists ran an experiment where they asked participants to count how many times a group of people passed a basketball. Halfway through the video, a person dressed in a gorilla suit walked directly through the scene, paused, waved at the camera, and then left. After the video ended, the researchers asked the participants if they saw anything unusual. More than half of them never noticed the gorilla at all. How is that possible? Their eyes physically saw the gorilla. The light entered their retinas, and the information was there. But their brains simply deleted it because it wasn't part of what they were focused on. Their attention was consumed by counting basketball passes, so the mind filtered out anything that wasn't directly related to the task at hand. This experiment is a small-scale example of how your brain actively hides things from you every second of the day. The truth is, you're constantly being bombarded with more information than your brain can process. So it sifts through that data, focusing on what it deems relevant and ignoring the rest. But what happens when we apply this concept on a larger scale? What if your entire understanding of life is just a carefully filtered illusion? What if everything you believe to be true, everything you hold as part of your reality, is simply a product of what your mind has allowed you to focus on while blocking out the rest? Think about it. Right now, your mind is shaping everything you perceive. Your beliefs, your opinions, and even your sense of self are all part of this active construction process. It's like wearing invisible glasses that only allow certain information to pass through while blocking out everything else. And here's where it gets interesting. This filtering mechanism isn't just about what you notice. It affects how you experience reality itself. Take language, for example. If you only speak one language, you're effectively trapped inside the mental framework of that language. There are concepts in other languages that don't even exist in yours. Ideas you literally cannot think about because your mind has no way to process them. If you've ever tried to translate something between languages, you know that some words or phrases just don't have an exact counterpart. These untranslatable concepts can't even be fully understood or felt by someone who doesn't speak that language. It's a limitation of perception, of the way your brain is trained to process the world. The same thing happens with perception itself. Different cultures throughout history have had different ways of perceiving the world. Ancient cultures, for instance, believed the world was filled with spirits and unseen forces. To them, these things were as real as the air we breathe. The spirits, the energies, the forces they couldn't see but believed were everywhere. That was their reality. But today, in our modern scientific worldview, those possibilities are filtered out before they even have a chance to enter our awareness. The very concept of spirits or unseen energies doesn't even register as something we might seriously consider, because our minds have been conditioned to ignore it. This brings up a disturbing thought. How much of reality do we fail to see, simply because we've been conditioned to ignore it? We've been taught what to value, what to believe, and what to dismiss. But what if there's more to life than what we've been conditioned to perceive? What if there are layers of reality that remain invisible to us because we've never been taught to look for them? You might be thinking, I don't believe in spirits or energies or forces that can't be seen. But that's the very point. Your mind has already filtered out these possibilities. For you, they simply don't exist, and that makes them invisible to your perception. But what if there's more to the world than what your mind allows you to see? The reality is that your brain is not a passive observer. It is an active participant in shaping your experience. Your brain is constantly constructing a reality based on what it's learned, what it's been conditioned to believe, and what it deems necessary for survival. Your mind is a powerful storyteller, but it's important to realize that the story it tells you may not be the full truth. It's filtered through your personal biases, past experiences, and the limitations of your senses. So, how do you begin to break free from this conditioned reality? It starts with awareness. Once you realize that your perception of the world is not an objective truth, but a constructed narrative, you begin to see things differently. You begin to question what you think you know, and open yourself up to the possibility that there's more to reality than meets the eye. The first step is to recognize that your mind is filtering your experiences. It's shaping your perception, not necessarily in a way that's aligned with objective reality, but in a way that's shaped by your history, your beliefs, and your environment. Once you become aware of this, you can start to challenge the limitations your mind has placed on your understanding of the world. As you expand your awareness and begin questioning the stories your mind tells, you may begin to notice things you never saw before. You may start to see the layers of reality that were once invisible, waiting just beneath the surface. And when that happens, your perception of the world will shift, revealing a new, richer experience of reality, one that is no longer bound by the filters of conditioning, but open to the full spectrum of existence. This is why people who go through profound awakenings or deep psychedelic experiences often come back and say, I can't unsee what I saw, because for a brief moment, they slipped outside the invisible filters of their own mind. If you want proof that this is happening to you right now, ask yourself, have you ever had an argument with someone where they saw the situation completely differently than you did? Have you ever remembered something one way, only to find out later that it happened completely differently? Have you ever believed something without question, only to wake up years later and wonder how you ever thought that way? That's the illusion in action. It's not that reality is fake, it's that you are only seeing a tiny fraction of it, and you don't even realize what's being left out. And the scariest part? Your brain isn't just filtering out random things. It's filtering out whatever doesn't align with the story it already believes. This means you aren't seeing what's real, you're seeing what you expect to be real. And that changes everything. Your mind is a storytelling machine. Every second of your life, your brain is constructing a story. A narrative so seamless that you don't even question it. But here's where it gets interesting. That story isn't just telling you what's happening, it's deciding what's real and what isn't. Think about dreams. When you're dreaming, no matter how strange things get, floating through the sky, talking to someone who passed away years ago, suddenly being in a place you've never seen, your mind accepts it as normal. It fills in the gaps so convincingly that you don't even question it until you wake up. But what if waking life is just another level of that illusion? There's a psychological concept called confabulation. It's what happens when people confidently recall memories that never actually happened. In studies, scientists have shown that our brains often make up details that feel completely real. For example, if you're shown a group of words like bed, pillow, blanket, snore, and later asked to recall them, most people will swear they saw the word sleep in the list, even though it was never there. Your brain doesn't lie to you on purpose. It's just designed to prioritize coherence over truth. This is why two people can live through the same event and remember completely different things. Their minds filled in the blanks differently, filtering reality through their personal biases, emotions, and past experiences. Now, apply this to your entire life. The person you believe yourself to be, the story you've constructed about your past, your identity, your values, this isn't just a reflection of reality. It's a carefully edited version of it. Every success, every failure, every belief you hold, your mind didn't simply record these events. It shaped them into a narrative. This narrative is something that makes sense of who you are and why you behave the way you do. But when something doesn't fit this story, when an experience or a piece of information challenges the narrative you've created, it gets ignored, rewritten, or twisted to make it fit. This is why we often experience discomfort when we encounter something that doesn't align with what we believe to be true. Think about it. When people have an experience that contradicts their worldview, whether it's a sudden, profound loss, a religious revelation, or hearing a perspective they've never considered before, it can feel deeply unsettling. It's not just about receiving new information. It's like discovering a crack in the illusion you've been living in. That moment of realization can shake your entire sense of self and what you thought was true. The deeper you look, the more you start to see that nothing you believe to be solid is as permanent as it seems. It can all be broken down, questioned, and reassembled. What if your opinions, your habits, and even your likes and dislikes aren't really yours at all? What if they are simply the results of a story that has been constructed for you over time by your experiences, by society, by your upbringing? This isn't just a philosophical question. It's something neuroscience is beginning to confirm. Studies have shown that when people make decisions, their brains actually decide before they are consciously aware of it. By the time you think you're making a choice, your brain has already made it for you. This means that if you aren't consciously controlling your thoughts, who is? Who is in charge of your decisions and your sense of self? Once you realize this, everything changes. It's as if you've been living in a house of mirrors, seeing yourself and the world reflected back in a distorted way. But once you start noticing how your mind constructs reality, how it fills in the blanks, how it rewrites memories, and how it creates an illusion that feels seamless and real, you can't unsee it. You begin to question everything. What else have I accepted without realizing? What else in my life has been shaped by forces outside my awareness? This questioning is where the shift begins. Instead of automatically reacting to every situation based on your conditioned beliefs, you begin to step back. You stop blindly following the script that your mind has been playing on repeat for years. Instead, you become the observer, detached from the story your mind is telling you. You watch the illusion unfold, recognizing it for what it is, without being trapped in it. This shift in perspective is incredibly liberating. It's like taking off a pair of glasses that have been distorting your view of the world, allowing you to see more clearly. And once you do, it changes everything. How you think, how you behave, and how you relate to the world around you. There are realizations that will change us forever, the way we see, feel, and live in this world. What do you think about the content of today's video? Feel free to leave a comment and share your perspective with us. Thank you for watching. If you learned something from this video, please like, subscribe to the Top Hidden Knowledge channel for more content on wisdom, spirituality, and personal growth. Or if you have time, check out other videos on this channel. Until next time.